Welcome to the Versions of Healing, the interview segment of the Healing Version podcast, a space created to uplift real stories from real people on their unique paths to healing. In each episode, we sit down with individuals from all walks of life, from survivors, overcomers, healers, and seekers, to talk about the experiences that shaped them and the steps they've taken towards wholeness. There's no single way to heal, and no story is too small. Whether the wounds come from trauma, grief, addiction, broken relationships, or self-doubt, this segment is here to hold space for every voice and every version of healing. These conversations are raw, powerful, and rooted in truth, because healing doesn't just happen in silence. It happens when we share, listen, and grow together. So come as you are, and let's explore the many versions of healing. Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Versions of Healing, the interview segment of the Healing Version podcast, which I got going on today. I hope you're having a fantastic day. If you're not, do something about it to turn it around. On this powerful episode of the Versions of Healing, we welcome Ann Hince, a woman whose journey through a devastating loss led her to a profound discovery about healing, one that begins within. At just age 19 years old, Ann found her mother dead in her home, a trauma that haunted her for decades. But everything changed after a single 15-minute session with an unfamiliar technique. That breakthrough unlocked not only her pain, but also a path into the deeper layers of her subconscious mind, where she began releasing long-held tension and trauma simply by using the power of her awareness. Today, Ann shares how we can learn to sit with that, and we sit with our feelings and not avoid it, and how to truly find peace and how peace comes from acknowledging and honoring our truth. Her story is a testament to how internal transformation can ripple outward to change our entire lives. Let's welcome Ann Hince to the Versions of Healing. Hi, Ann. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for asking.
Good.
So you have a very profound story that led you into this journey of healing. Can you share with us your experience at 19 years old and finding your mom?
Yeah, that was quite a morning. That was quite traumatic. And yes, I woke up that morning and she normally had the radio going, right? So I would normally know everything was normal. But that morning there was no sound in the house at all. There was, in fact, no one in the house. And I woke up and found her dead on the bathroom floor. And she had had cancer. She had had throat and lung cancer from drinking and smoking too much for too long. And suddenly one of the tumors in her throat burst in the night. So that's when I found her.
Okay. So for 20 years, you carried that trauma. What was it like living with the unprocessed grief?
Well, it was normal for me. I lived my whole life that way, just not being taught how to release emotions, right? Just suppressing it all. And that trauma was just one on top of multiple other traumas that I'd had in my life. I'd had a house fire. I'd been the one to find the flames coming in through my bedroom wall. I'd actually been born with my right foot up against my right shin. So my whole body was twisted. And so I had to release that. And then at 6 weeks old, I was handed over for adoption. So I had that in me. And at the age of 9, I was sent to boarding school. We lived in Hong Kong. And I was sent to boarding school in England, halfway across the world. And I was sent to a boys' boarding school. It was my brother's boarding school.
Oh, were you the only girl?
I was the only girl boarder. We had some day girls who would come for lessons and then go home. But I was teased mercilessly by those boys. So that all lived inside of me, right? And
I bet. Boys can be so harsh. I have 4, so I know.
Wow. Yeah. And then my parents became alcoholics in my teenage years. So I had that as well. But the whole time I'd been taught just to carry on with life, right? Just to suppress or ignore all those thoughts and feelings that I had and just carry on with life. So that was my normal. And I was very reactionary. I was very emotional. I was easily triggered. My boys could easily push my buttons once I had my boys. And so I knew I had to change. I absolutely knew I had to change, and I was determined to change. I just didn't know how until I was in my early 40s.
So you mentioned a 15-minute session that shifted everything. Can you tell us more about that moment and the technique that helped you?
Sure. I'd actually gone to a doctor's appointment, and he was a holistic physician, so he had more tools in his toolbox than most doctors do. And I can't remember why I went to see him to this day. It was nothing to do with mental health, that's for sure. But he happened to notice that I was really stressed. And he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what that stress level was. And I said 8. And then he asked me why. And that's when I realized, oh, it was finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor all those years ago, because the tears were still just under the surface all those years later. And he happened to know this technique that's called EFT, which is short for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's also called tapping. Are you familiar with it?
I had someone on here that did the tapping. We didn't go too much into deep into it, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Well, it's basically tapping on meridian points on the body. And that tapping, as you're talking through something that happened, the tapping releases the energy from the nervous system. Like your body has a normal way it reacts to a trauma that you've experienced. It kind of goes into the same emotions. And the tapping allows the energy to be disrupted and to release. So he tapped with me about my mother's death. Right? I told the story. I let the tears flow as I tapped on myself, and he tapped on him. And I was able to then tell the story without the emotions, because the emotions had gone. So that's when I realized that we hold those emotions physically in our body and that we can let them go.
Wow. Tapping. So you do the tapping thing now with clients?
I do some with clients, yes. Some with friends, yes. I did some with a friend this afternoon. I still use it sometimes myself.
Do you have to be in a certain state of mind, or speaking, or can you meditate?
Any state of mind, right? If you're in the middle of something traumatic, right? If you've been triggered by something, you can just tap right then and there, and it helps to release the emotion that's in your body. Or what I did,
I'm gonna have to tap into tapping. I'm gonna.
Well, you have a lot of boys at home, right? So if you get frustrated, you can just go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's what I need to know.
Yes.
I have 2 7-year-olds, a 17-year-old, and a 20-year-old, and then I have an 18-year-old daughter. So yeah, I need to do a lot of tapping.
Well, I found that it made me more peaceful, and when I was more peaceful, my family was more peaceful. So yeah, it's just taking responsibility for how we feel and working with those emotions allows it to release. But that's what I kind of did on a day-to-day basis, but I wanted it to go faster. I wanted more. I wanted the changes to be bigger and to be faster. So I wrote down all my childhood traumas, everything that was emotional that happened, the big traumas, the little traumas, the humiliations, the embarrassments, the resentments. I wrote them all down, and then I tapped through. So I remembered them. I went through the memory, and I tapped through the memory, and I let the emotions go that it was still stored inside of me from those earlier traumas. And that's when things really started.
It does what for the nervous system?
It releases the energy that's stuck in there from those memories.
Wow. I definitely need to tap. No, seriously, I've been doing some childhood trauma digging and figuring out some things that's been buried inside that I haven't dealt with. And I did have a spiritual session with the spiritual advisor, and we were able to tap in what that core memory was. So I'm still like, I'll say I figured it out. I've scratched the surface, but I feel like tapping is going to help. So thank you for
You're welcome.
bringing
And what you
tapping
do,
back into my...
what you do is you tap through the memory and you let the emotions, you let yourself feel the emotions. Then you go back to the beginning of the memory and you tap through it again. And then you go back to the beginning and you tap through it again. You keep going through it until it's all been cleared out, until you can tell someone the story of what happened with no resistance and no emotions.
Well, that was good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So can anyone do this kind of inner work, or does it require guide or special training?
Some people want someone to do it with because they can't come up with the words themselves, or they feel like it's going to be too overwhelming for them. And for those people, then yes, find someone to work with. There are EFT practitioners, and there are other practitioners out there that can help you. Some people like me wanted to do it all myself because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable with someone else, but I was willing to be vulnerable with myself. So I did it myself.
Okay. Good. That's good. That's good. So you said something powerful. You said society tells us not to feel what we're feeling. Why do you think so many of us suppress our emotions?
Because we're taught by people who were taught to suppress it themselves. Just goes through the generation after generation. We're just taught the same thing until we change, right? So this is how we change. I wish I had done it. You might wish this too. I wish I had done it before I had kids, right? Because then I would have been different and I would have taught them the correct way from the beginning. But they were relatively young when I started, so I don't know, maybe they will be different, but it's going to take a big shift for us all to realize that we need to actually feel the emotions rather than bypass them or suppress them or think positively, right? And there's a lot of that going around, just think positively. But no, when we think positively, we're suppressing the actual thought or the feeling that we're having. And what it is it has energy underneath it. That's why it's coming up. So we want to notice it, acknowledge it, and feel it. And then it disappears. Then the thoughts stop coming up. They actually weren't our thoughts in the first place. I found out that the thoughts that I used to think over and over again, the judgmental and self-critical thoughts, had been my dad's words that I had taken on as my own and replayed over and over again. But I could not see that until they disappeared.
Right. Start hearing it so much that you start believing it for yourself.
Right. And I thought it was me, but it wasn't. I was just programmed that way.
Yeah. Whew. The things we go through to get where we need to get to be where we need to be today. So what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to accept or even recognize what they're truly feeling?
Well, the first thing I did was start asking myself during the day, how am I feeling right now? Like putting words to that feeling. Because when we do that, for a moment, we have to go inside and notice. We have to sense inside how we're feeling. And even that moment of sensing allows a little bit of the energy to release. So now we've got cell phones that have timers on, right? So we can set a timer to go off every hour. When it goes off, we can say, okay, how am I feeling right now? And put words to that. I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry. Right? Actually name it, because until we can step back and say, okay, look at me, this is what I'm feeling. Until we can do that, we can't actually do anything about it. But once we can do that, that's the beginning of self-awareness. Once we can do that, then we can do something about it. We can tap. We can do whatever we're going to do with it, but we can work with that emotion to let it go. And it becomes easier. Do you use
any other methods besides tapping to help with those emotions?
Tapping was the first thing that I really found worked extremely well. It's very powerful. Although if you look at a lot of videos online, they've gone more towards the positive, right? So they're not as good. You've got to use your own words, and you've got to stick with the negative, because that's where the power of EFT is. But what I found is, as I did more and more EFT tapping, I became aware at a deeper level. Now, some people might already be aware at this level, but I wasn't. But if you're aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions, so for example, if you feel frustration, where are you feeling it in your body? That there is tension in the body that we call frustration. Mm-hmm. So if you can sense that tension, then you can do something else. You can just feel those feelings. You can focus on those sensations and allow them to release. But I couldn't have done that without EFT. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Can you feel the sensations where you feel frustration?
Yes. All in my back and my shoulders.
Okay, good. That's great.
I do. I feel it, but I've never understood the whole what to do in those emotions. It's just okay, they're there. The emotions are there. I feel it, but
right. Well, EFT can work, right? EFT is a great way to start. But if you could just feel that tension in your back and just, I talked to it. That's what I did. I'd say, okay, I can feel you right there. I just want to feel you, right? I don't want to change you. I just want to allow you to be felt. And I would focus on it, spend time focusing on it and just feeling it, and it would start to release. And then I'd do it again and again and again, kind of like EFT. I'd do that multiple times. With the feeling, I'd also feel it multiple times, and it starts to relax and to release that tension.
Okay, that's good. So how has accepting your emotions, or how has accepting your emotions changed the way you relate to others and to the world around you?
Well, it's done a lot, but it took a little while on my journey to actually start to really just take responsibility for everything that happens. So if I am interacting with someone, right, and there's some emotion involved, I take responsibility for it and I feel it and I let it go. If I'm listening to the news and it brings up something inside of me, I feel it and I let it go. So I always bring it back to me. I take responsibility for everything. And that has changed the way I interact with everything, right? Because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm working on my healing through what happens around in the world.
Okay. That's good. So are there simple practices or daily habits you recommend to start turning your inner truth and releasing stored emotions?
Well, as I said, I would ask myself multiple times a day how I felt. And that built over time. The first time I did it, I only could do it once a day because I'd forget. But back then I didn't have a phone. But it became easier as time went on, right? So that's self-awareness deepening, as is being aware of the sensations, right? That's a deeper level of self-awareness. So then what I would do the EFT. I worked through my childhood traumas one a day until I'd gone through them all. So I tapped for about an hour to an hour and a half every day to go through one trauma a day. And that was massive. That was a huge change. My life changed at that point. My mind changed. It felt like I was living in a different reality because my dad's voice disappeared out of my mind. So that's something someone could do if they were really determined to change like I was. But the other thing I do is in the morning, as soon as I wake up and just before I'm going to sleep, I just feel. I come out of my thinking mind, which again takes practice, and I just feel the sensations in my body. And that's a way to also deepen self-awareness.
And so, would you say that's meditating at those moments before you go to sleep and when you first wake up?
It could be. There is a form of meditation called Vipassana meditation, which is somewhat similar to that, where you scan the body. I don't tend to think of it as meditation because I'm very active, right? I'm very actively feeling. I'm not thinking, but I'm feeling. So it doesn't feel like meditation to me, but someone might call it that.
Okay. That's fair. So you mentioned the subconscious. How can we begin to work with it rather than let it rule us? That subconscious mind. I keep thinking about the comments you're making about your dad.
I do think the conscious mind is essentially, it's all those memories, it's all those emotions that are stored in us. And I believe it's the connective tissue in the body, right? Because I've put my awareness now, I can get my awareness inside my body. I can feel through the connective tissue and through the bones. And I'm feeling through the connective tissue. So I think that's where the subconscious mind is, because I feel emotion. I feel emotions and memories pop into my mind as I focus on some tension there and release it. So all of this work is working with the subconscious mind, is opening it up, right? And that's what we call, expanding our consciousness. We're actually opening up the subconscious and making it more conscious, which is an expansion of consciousness. So all of this work is doing that. Even with the EFT, like when you're working through a memory, you're tapping through it, and then you go back to the beginning and you tap through it again. As that happens, more details of the story that you had forgotten, that had been stored in your subconscious mind, open up, and you remember more details again. So that is the subconscious mind opening up. That's consciousness expanding.
So does this work with you tapping yourself? And if you were to do it with someone else, so I know you mentioned the doctor, the holistic doctor, he tapped himself. He didn't tap you. So it's like a group effort, like everybody taps themselves.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think you don't have to. With my friend this afternoon, sometimes I was tapping on myself. Sometimes I was just watching her tap.
Okay, because I don't know. I picture somebody maybe tapping you, but you do your own tapping.
You do your own tapping, although you can tap other people. So if you have like an elderly relative or a friend or something who can no longer tap, right? They can't use their arms; it's too tiring. Or children, right? Youngsters, babies, you can tap on them. I used to tap on my son when he was about 8 and he had nightmares. I would just go and tap on his points. I didn't need to say anything because the emotion was already in his body, right? He was feeling what he'd been dreaming about. And I would just tap and he would relax. And then he'd say, "It's okay, Mum, I can go back to sleep now."
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a baby one time. I was on an international flight and we were taking off and there was a baby screaming. And you know how people on planes hate babies screaming.
Yes.
And it just kept screaming. So eventually I went and swapped places with the lady's husband and asked if it would be okay if I tapped on her child. And I just gently tapped on his points. And after 2 or 3 rounds of these points, he just fell asleep in his mother's arms. He was just exhausted. And the tapping allowed his nervous system to relax and fall asleep.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's powerful.
I can just imagine it. I'm like playing it out in my head and the baby's just
I know. I wish I had known it when my kids were babies, right? That would have been so much easier.
Man. That would be a great technique to have. Yeah. I have a few friends who just became new moms. I'll have to send them some tapping information to help with the babies.
Yes, definitely.
So what would you say has surprised you the most through your healing journey?
Well, one was having the mind become quiet because I'd never experienced that before. I hadn't known that was possible even. So that was really fun. But there's also all these other changes. I mean, my body is straightener. It's straightened, more straight. I've actually grown in my 50s because my neck has been getting straighter and my skull bones have shifted because they've relaxed into a more aligned position. So I had no idea that was possible. And I've released so much tension in my head that I can actually sing notes now that I couldn't sing before. because, right, the skull is the echo chamber for the voice. So when the skull is much more relaxed, which mine is, right, it sounds different. So that's something I'd never imagined was possible before. And I can feel music in my body, not just hear it with my ears. I can feel it move through my body, which is really fun. And I didn't know was possible before either.
Wow.
So, yeah, lots of changes.
Awesome. Really, really great healing journey with, like, when you can feel movement in your body, that, like, that's, your body's moving in places for the better.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea, right? I mean, I can feel inside my bones, inside my flesh, and I can focus on it like a laser beam, and I hear and I feel these adhesions release. It sounds like old fabric ripping, which is kind of scary to begin with, but after the first time it was okay. But that's tension that's been in there my whole life, probably, and it just feels really good to release it. But the fact that we can do that with the power of our mind, it blows my mind.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if there's someone out there listening today and is still deeply affected by a past trauma, what is one thing you want them to hear or take with them from this interview?
That you really can get over it. You don't forget it, but you can let go of all the emotions around it so that it's no longer affecting you in your day-to-day life, and then it's no longer affecting you in the future. Because when we hold on to that tension, it is really affecting us now. It's dis-ease inside of us, which then affects our future. So you can definitely work through it. It's not always easy, but it's possible.
Definitely not easy, but it is possible. So where can our listeners connect with you if they wanted to contact you? Your social medias, website. Do you have a book?
I do have a book. Yes, it's called The Pathway to Insight, and I have a workbook that goes with it, and it just walks you through EFT and then the steps beyond it. And
where can we find your book?
It's on Amazon, and there's links, I think, on my website. So my website's just my name, annhince.com. And I'm very active on Facebook, and I'm very active on my YouTube channel, and I put a lot of information out there, a lot of understanding of this, and examples and explanations on how to do this work. And again, that's just my name as well. So it's at Ann Hince on YouTube.
And Facebook is just your name?
Ann Hince Wisdom on Facebook.
Ann Hince Wisdom. Okay, and I will also put this information in the description box of this episode. Do you have any last words or anything that you would like to share with the audience that I did not ask you today?
Well, we talked about a lot of the changes, but part of that is the understanding that there is so much more depth to life than we realize, right? A lot of us are kind of fed up with life, right? Maybe we're really depressed and we don't think it's worth going on, perhaps. But if you do this work, you realize there is so much more to life. It's such a deeper experience once you do this work that it's absolutely worth doing.
Yes, it is absolutely worth doing. I agree. And it can be done. It's not easy, but it's, I know we mentioned, or you talked about, like, being positive. I am big on being positive, but I do believe there's a such thing as toxic positivity, where you can just be overly positive. It's like, it's okay to feel, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be in your emotions. It's okay to lay in the bed all day one day and do nothing. Sometimes we need those days. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's about how long you stay in it. Don't stay in it forever. You got to get out of it eventually, but it's okay to have those days. So I thank you all so much for coming back for another episode of the Healing Version podcast with me, your host, Deborah. And I will put all this great information that Ann has shared with us in the description box. And I hope that you all have an amazing day. Peace.